Hello everyone, my name is Errol, and in the last two videos we changed Atavism's login UI by creating a new one with the UI builder. Now I'm finally getting to the character customization scene, and the first thing I needed was a UI with tabs. So in this video we are going to create this custom tab control in the UI builder. The first thing I needed to do was organize my scripts. Why? Well, I'm making use of the resources.load command, and it likes having things in a resources folder, so I made one. And in that folder, I made a styles folder to hold all my USS files, and I renamed the last video's UI login CSS file to common styles, because I want to reuse it again. I also created this UXML folder, which we'll need for our custom control, and I've split up the UI files for the login and character selection scenes into their own folders. Now, if you remember, after we log in with the login scene, the next scene is the character selection scene, and you'll find that within Dragon Sand's Atavism folder under Scenes. We will double-click our character selection screen, and here it is, and we are going to replace this canvas object here, so I'm going to deactivate that. And you may have noticed I already created another game object. It's a UI document that I called UI Canvas. I'll activate that. And its source asset I also already created. And it's a UXML document called UI Character Selection Source. I need to name my documents better, but I'll load it up in the UI builder for you to see. Starting off, I have this screen customized visual element to hold all of the panels dealing with character customization. I don't know if that's a good idea since the UI builder is getting a bit sluggish, but I've already rebuilt this so many times, why not perpetuate that? Inside of it, I have another panel for the background and a separate one for the banner at the top. And yes, all files are available to download if you check the description. Expanding panel customize, we now get to our custom controls. This IconTabsView with the number sign or pound sign or sharp sign or hashtag on it, that's a custom control I made. If you recall from 2 videos ago, you can make custom controls and they show up here under project. I made 2 custom controls, IconTabsView and IconTab. IconTabsView is a container and it must contain 2 sections. The first section, tabs container, holds all the icon tabs, and the second section, content container, holds the contents for each tab. It can hold other things, but it needs those 2. Expanding the tabs container, we will find our second custom control, or a bunch of them. Each of these are IconTab controls. Notice when I select tab 1, which is an IconTab control, in its properties, we have a field called target ID, and it contains a string called content1. The idea is when a player clicks tab 1, it will find this target ID, content1, in the content container. Here it is, content1. It will then display it, and the others it won't display. You know how tabs work. I don't know why I'm explaining this to you. I'm going to rant a bit even though it might be my fault, but creating these custom controls are a bit wonky. Why? Well, let's take a look at tab 1. It has this element here called focus line, which is the glowy line when a tab is focused. It is dimmed out because I made it an intrinsic part of IconTab, and I can't edit it. I also wanted to add the icon as an intrinsic part, but then I wouldn't be able to edit the icon image, at least not easily. And then what's the point in that? So, if I want to make a new icon tab, the method I have is to drag it in, and then drag in another visual element, which I must name icon so that the custom controls knows what to do with it. I know that's not good practice, and it would have been neat if the UI builder allowed me to specify an image attribute in the IconTab's properties so it could propagate that to an embedded icon, but it doesn't. Anyway, I modeled my custom tabs off of tab view and tab button, which you can find here in the projects. I didn't use these tab view, tab button controls because I wanted mine to have icons as tabs, and these ones have text. Watch. One of you is going to point out a tab control I could have downloaded and used, and then I wouldn't have had to waste the last 4 days of my life, but whatever. Okay, let's take a look at our first custom control, the IconTab. IconTab has this target ID attribute, a custom attribute that I've added, and it also has this pre-made visual element which displays this glowy line image. Going back to the Unity editor, we have the IconTab C# script in my folder. In the resources styles folder, we have a USS file, IconTab styles. And in the resources UXML folder, we have the UXML file called IconTab. If I open up the IconTab UXML file, this is the template used for our custom control. Here's that focus line, glowy line image thing. Let's take a look at the USS file, which is in the styles folder. It is called IconTab styles, and I'll double click it to open up in our code viewer. And here are the styles for icon-tab. And note that these styles here have icon as a child. That's why I needed to name the image icon. We have styles to set when it's at an unselected state, when we are hovering over it, and when it's selected. This is also where we set the styles for our glowy line thingy to make it visible and invisible. Now on to the heart of this, the code, which is in my folder and uninspiringly called IconTab. I'll double click it to bring it up. As shown previously, to make a custom control, you'll need to define it as a visual element class, and you need to give it this UXML factory definition. The next part, however, is new. Well, at least I haven't shown it before. I have these comments here where I'm complaining. That's all I use comments for, to be honest. And then we have this class definition, which allows us to set the traits for IconTab. In other words, this will put into the inspector that target ID field for the user to fill in. Following that are some variables. Here's the file name for the style sheet I showed you earlier. Here's the file name for the UXML file. These are class names. This is the class name for when a tab is active. All good stuff. This is the target ID string, which the user needs to fill in. And this, the visual element target variable, is the actual content we want to show and hide. The target ID variable is just a text string, and it's used to find and identify the visual element holding the content, the target variable. This defines our onSelect event, which hopefully makes sense from its name, and here are our constructors, finally. They call the init method, which is used to set up our icon tab. Here, it loads in our style sheets and that UXML file, and because of this resources.load, that's why I put everything in that resources folder. And finally are the rest of the methods, one for selecting, one for deselecting, one for when the mouse is clicked. Here you can see where the target, the panel that contains the contents, is shown when clicked, and then not shown when deselected. However, you may be thinking, hey, when was the target defined? And it wasn't. It's actually defined by the other custom class, the container called IconTabsView. Going back to our UI builder, IconTabsView holds two sections, tabs container and content container. However, these are simple visual elements which I manually dragged in. IconTabsView is normally empty, and if I drag one in, you can see it has nothing inside of it. There's nothing to expand. You will need to drag in two visual elements and call them tabs container and content container. I would have liked to have put in instructions in the inspector, but I couldn't figure that out, and I know I'm going to forget this, so that's why I'm making this video. Oh, you don't need to name those two sections tabs container and content container. You can change those names here in the icon tab builder. Ugh, I already forgot what it's called. See, this is why I need video. Anyway, here in the inspector, you can see you can change the names to whatever you'd like, but these are the defaults. Just remember, tabs container contains our icon tabs and content container contains the associated content each tab wants to show. Let's move on to the code for our IconTabs view. I have comments up here for references because I look up a lot of stuff, although 80% of the time it's the wrong stuff. And again, this is a custom control, so we are inheriting from the visual element. And all of this should be standard now, although I do want to point out that this variable and then this name here needs to be named similarly, because if you don't, it won't populate properly in the inspector, and that took me a long time to figure out. Continuing on, we have our variables. This variable here, mActiveTab, holds the active tab. This is the constructor, as you're used to, and here is the register callback for onGeometryChange. OnGeometryChange is where we initialize all of our stuff. Here we'll have mTabContent reference the section where all of the icon tabs are, and mContent will point to where our content is. By the way, it's important that you define these things at the right time. If I moved mtab content and mcontent into our constructor, things break. You won't be able to use the custom control in the UI builder. You'll get another red error that you ignore. I ignore all those errors now because sometimes they're not real. I kid, I do look it up, but sometimes I find it should have been fixed in this version. And then I'm just all, oh my goodness. Anyway, this for statement goes through the children of our tab content, and those kids, as you know, are our icon tabs. So when it reaches an icon tab, it will check to see if it has a target yet, and if it doesn't, it will take the target ID, which is the name of the content section you typed in, and it will find it with this query and attach it to its target variable. Remember when I said, hey, when was the target defined? Well, it's done here. And then we initialize that icon tab with a init tab. We have a lot of initialization methods. Below that, we have some code to decide what the active tab is, which I eventually want to change because I want it to be the last tab, but I'll do that later. Here's the init tab we were talking about. It adds the activate method to the icon tab's onSelect event. So when you select it, it runs activate. And that method is right here, and it selects and deselects tabs as needed. Whew. I know I went through this really quickly, but the code's in the description if you really want to go through the logic. I'm just glad it works, because a lot of things broke when I was testing this out. For example, I'm going to duplicate something here, and then I'm going to drag it somewhere else, and then it didn't duplicate properly, and then when I save it, it's like, it moved things around. It drives me mad. Anyway, we're done. I hope you learned something. I know I did, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.